right, welcome guys to Monday. Today we are going to continue learning about natural selection. So far we learned about evolution and how organisms have to adapt if they need to survive in their new environments, and how traits or genes or characteristics are passed down from parents to their offsprings on and on and on until they establish a favorable trait or characteristic that will help them survive a given condition or a climate. Now, natural selection is actually what explains how a population changes in response to the environment. These changes are known as adaptations, and these are inherited, which means that they must be carried on by genes, our genes, genetic components in living organisms. Now, if you remember Charles Darwin, who went on an expedition and found out about the finches and developed a theory on evolution. He developed the theory before Gregor Mendel. Mendel is known as the father of genetics. But Charles Darwin actually developed his theory even before Gregor Mendel's experiments. He knew nothing about genes, but he did definitely make a connection between natural selection and heredity. Now, when we talk about heredity and genes, let's talk about mutations. Now, mutations are actually what is causing those adaptations. It's the changes in our genes. There has been a growing body or growing knowledge about heredity for a long time. And this knowledge explains many of Darwin's observations and evolution. For example, Darwin actually observed that individuals in a population show variation in their traits. Today, scientists are actually able to understand how variations in populations are caused by a random mutation in genes. The important part about random mutations is that they are the reason for variations of traits in population. If there was no random mutations, it's very much possible that everything would look the same. Everyone would look the same. But because there are random mutations in genes that are happening at unknown or at times that we cannot understand, there is difference. There is something that can be unique to each person. Now, if you look at this picture, adaptation took place in squirrels, and those who have brown fur adapted better than squirrels with white fur. And this could be because squirrels with brown fur could potentially hide in the trees better. They could camouflage better, which made them less of a prey to eagles compared to white squirrels who could be spotted very easily and could become prey and be eaten up very easily. So these adaptations increased the rates of survival. And mutations actually lead to alleles. Now, alleles are actually the different forms of gene. Normally, there are two types of alleles that form a gene. Now, a genetic mutations can lead to different alleles of that gene, which in turn also leads to a variation in trait. Now, because there are mutated alleles, it may cause favorable and unfavorable adaptations. And if it's favorable, you survive, you become stronger. You grow. But if it's unfavorable, again, you have no choice but to be weaned off. You could probably not have a lot of survival chances. Nature always selects those alleles that are favorable to it, those genes or those alleles that will help them survive. So favorable alleles will always be selected compared to unfavorable ones. As there are variations, there's going to be a genetic variation, which means that the variety of population or variety of alleles in a population is going to be extremely different. It's going to be expansive. It's going to be not bound. It's going to be unbound. some mutations can actually be harmful because it can cause genetic disorders. But mutations can also be helpful because it can contribute to genetic variation. And genetic variation is actually important because it can ensure natural selection and also ensure that the population has a better chance of survival should the environment change. Now imagine everyone being the same, everyone having the same type of genes, not being different from each other. Now, if there was any change in the environment, it's very much possible that all of them would probably not survive and die. But if there's variation, there is chance that at least some people will survive and some won't, if there is a drastic change in the environment. And that's why we need to ensure that there's going to be a population that's different, that is variable, that there is a variation. Now, the environment changes all the time, and that is a part of evolution. And let's look at this picture to understand how we understand how it takes place. Now, pesticides normally almost kills all of the beetles among the survivors, right? Now, let's look at this leaf. There are a lot of beetles, and pesticides probably killed a lot of them, except for these two little ones, okay? And they probably carried a mutated allele for pesticide resistance. Now, in the next generation, when these two mate and they have children, it's going to increase their number. More and more pesticides become resistant to, more and more beetles, become resistant to pesticides. And in even the next generation, even lesser beetles are going to die from pesticides. There'll be more genetic variation and more people, or more and more beetles become mutated, and the mutated allele number will outnumber the rest, and eventually all of the population will become immune to pesticide. And that's how these genetic variations take place. If we didn't have these two little variations or mutations in the beginning, all of them would just die off. But because there was variation, it allowed them to survive and reproduce and help them to carry on that gene. And they further reproduced, and eventually all of them became immune, or almost all of them became immune. Natural selection takes place. I want you guys to go ahead and read more about isolation and adaptation in natural selection. Also, what happens when there's extinction of species. Okay? And that's it for today. I hope you guys have a great day. I will see you later. Bye.